Well, good evening and welcome to this wonderful MCHR Candid Conversations, where tonight, we are doing something that we have not done before. And I believe with MCHR, that's what we do. I am Tia Taylor, and I'm the co chair for Michigan Coalition for Human Rights. And I'm so excited to bring our guest on very shortly because what we're talking about today is the African American history in the age of Trump. Mhm. We're going there today. And we want to hear from all the perspectives so that we are knowledgeable of what action to take. And at MCHR, it's about action. So, with no further ado, we have one of our key MCHR board members, Abayomi. And he's going to come on, he's going to say a little bit about himself, and we're going to dive right into this conversation. What's next? What are our next steps? How do we come together? How do we make an impact in a positive direction? Thank you so much. All right, Abayomi. Hello.
Hello to you.
How are you tonight?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm so glad that you took time out of your busy schedule. And with all that you do, can you share a little bit about yourself with our members and our audience today?
I've been a member of the board of the Michigan Coalition for Human Rights for about 20 years now. Uh, I've served as the vice chairperson, president, vice president, and board member at large, which I am now. And I've worked on a number of issues prior to becoming a board member. And since I've been a board member, they range from police misconduct to African affairs to economic issues that are impacting people here in the city of Detroit and around the country and indeed internationally. Also, I'm a person who is very much interested in what can be done directly in regard to the crises, the mounting crises that we're facing right now in the United States and indeed internationally. So those are some of the things that I've been doing over the last 2 decades, and hopefully things will pick up in terms of activism and also the level of consciousness as we move forward in this year 2025.
That is so important. I think the level of consciousness is excellent. It's so good, and like you said, I mean, you've been out there. I mean, if I had to describe you, Abayomi, I mean, whatever the conversation is, whatever the need is, I have seen you at the forefront. And I'm so blessed to have you a part of MCHR and for me to be able to be co-chair as you have held so many hats. But I wanted to make sure that we didn't let time go by without acknowledging how important you are to the board, and how important you are in our community. So I want to tell people, though, Michigan Coalition for Human Rights promotes awareness of, commitment to, and advocacy for human rights and the environmental rights of planet Earth through education, community organization, and action. MCHR opposes forces that suppress human dignity, freedom, and justice locally and around the world. And I believe, Abayomi, that's why we're here today. And you have been doing a lot of study and research in African Americans and in this Trump era, our history. Tell us about that research, what you have come up with, and what has been the conversation.
Last month was African American History Month. It's been designated as such for the last 49 years since 1976. And of course, with the new administration that came into an office nearly 2 months ago on January 20th, one of the first declarations was to eliminate any federal agency recognition of Black History Month, Women's History Month, Pride Month, go all the way down the line. This is what they said during the first days of their administration, which is an insult, really, to the people who have built this country and who continue to make a contribution to the United States, indeed the world. Then later, they seemed to suggest that that was no longer the case, and they were going to have some type of acknowledgement of Black History Month. But the people I saw who were involved were those who are not involved in the efforts to improve the lot of the African American people and the people in general in this country and worldwide. So that's what prompted me to reach out around this issue. This is outrageous that people who have contributed so much, who have been here since way back 17th, actually in the 16th century in North America, and at the same time, their contributions are not being recognized. It's as if it's something negative to recognize the specific contributions of the African American people, people of Latin American descent, Asian Americans, and others, the indigenous people of this land, who have suffered for centuries, who have been forced off their land and been subjected to genocide. So all of this is relevant to where we are today, and having the capacity to actually organize and mobilize, against what we see coming towards us on a daily basis.
Beautiful. It is, I think in the beginning, people thought this can't be happening. I don't think they believe, they said it, it was written. It was written that these actions were going to take place. And yet, because someone else decided to get up and say, no, it's not, but it was already written that it was going to happen. And I just believe that people couldn't believe that it was going to happen. They didn't want to believe it, and here we are because people didn't believe that could happen, and so can you talk about like couple of things, that the first couple of things, because a lot of times people aren't really keyed into what actually happened.
Yes, and it's two things come to my mind immediately. We lived through the first, well, many of us who are still alive lived through the first Trump administration between 2017 and 2021. So we should know from that experience in regard to what type of leadership that the 330 million people who reside in the United States would be subjected to. Moreover, they issued a program. It's called Project 2025. It's over 900 pages. And most people don't have time to read over 900 pages of a book or a document or a proposal. But there are executive summaries of it. And so they warned us, as you said. People in the United States who would listen were warned that all of these things were going to come to pass. So who is in fact going to bring about the change that's necessary to reverse this current situation? Because what we're looking at right now is a declining economy, a domestic situation that is becoming more and more tense, and also an international situation that is becoming more divided and more divisive and unstable and destabilized. And you can see right now with the relationship between the United States and Canada, for example, neighbors, largest trading partners internationally, and yet there's a trade war that's going on now. It's not initiated by the Canadian government, but initiated by the United States government. something that's totally unnecessary, and it will have dire consequences for people here in this country, particularly African American people and oppressed people of color, working class people in general are going to have to bear the brunt of the rising prices, the scarcity of goods, and also the massive layoffs that are going to be taking place. We look at these attacks on the federal government, federal employees. It's racist, and it's also sexist because a lot of African Americans work for the federal government. A lot of African Americans work for the U.S. Postal Service. A lot of women, Black women and women of other races, work for the federal government and for the U.S. Postal Service. So this is going to have a devastating impact on the stability of the African American community in the United States. Also, we're going to have to look at what impact this is going to have on the overall economy. Anytime you come on television and announce that hundreds of thousands of people are going to be losing their jobs, it's going to have a negative impact on people who are in the upper echelons of society. We've seen in the last 2 days, the stock market in New York has dropped precipitously because of the tariffs that have been announced and also these layoffs that are taking place for no reason. And how do you expect people to have confidence in the future if you don't know if you're going to have a job? You're not going to be looking to buy a house or looking to buy a new car or a new television set or taking a vacation or even buying anything, any type of consumer goods, if you don't know whether you'll be employed gainfully in the next few weeks and months. So this is what people are being subjected to here in this country right now. I believe that people will rise to the occasion. I mean, there's been a lot of trauma, what I've noticed among a lot of people in Detroit and in Black communities across the United States. They're traumatized by what they have been experiencing over the last few weeks. First, the shock of having to potentially endure another Trump administration, and then the daily issuance of executive orders related to race relations, tariffs, the fact that the Army, they fired the Joint Chiefs of Staff chairperson just last week, an African American, and replaced him with a white person. Now, I'm not pro-military at all, but just the optics of what is going on right now in Washington, D.C. Does not bode well for people of color here in the United States and anyone who is concerned about justice, equality, freedom, the right to self-determination, the right to free speech, and any other so-called right that ostensibly is guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution. So this is going to impact the historical trajectory of the African American people here in the United States. We're going to have to come together and fight a battle, which we didn't ask for this, but we have to rise to the occasion to combat these efforts to put us back even further than what we have been set back over the last generation and a half.
Yeah, it's I guess the thing about it is that for some, it's like, and we're going to discuss some of these things a little bit later, but how do we fight back, right?
Yes.
How do we fight back when, and just to have my own opinion in here, when you look at the fact that most of us did not vote for him, okay?
Yes.
And a lot of people, a lot of us were saying it's not about the person for this particular vote, presidential vote. It was more about the democracy and to try to maintain democracy. That was the message. That's what we were
Yes.
saying. And yet, I know a lot of people didn't want to read it, but I sure did download that and pulled it up online, that Project 2025, so I could comb through it. the
Yes.
967 pages, right?
Hmm.
Because I need to know if it was if it was 2 million. If we said everybody would get $2 million if they read Project 2025. How many
Coming from
people will
who?
read it?
Who would, I mean,
Everybody.
is that from Elon Musk or who? He would give you $2 million?
They're not going to give it to you. But
Okay.
when you look at all of the different cuts and everything and how we will be impacted,
Yeah, I mean, like the elimination
then
of the Department of Education, for example, the
yes.
U.S. aid, which has done some negative things, but at the same time, it does a lot of positive programs as well, like providing antiretroviral drugs to people who are suffering from HIV or AIDS,
Yeah.
providing vaccines to children who are battling childhood diseases, monitoring diseases, infectious diseases that are taking place around the world. So if we don't know what is going on, for example, in other parts of the world, uh, the diseases, ailments, they don't stop at the borders of the United States. COVID proved that clearly 5 years ago, that it could spread and it could spread rapidly. And if you have people who are committed to not only suppressing information, scientific information from circulating and becoming important in the popular view, then they're very dangerous because things can be developing,
Mhm.
and their thrust is to not to allow the American people to know what's going on because it may interfere with their agenda. So these are the things that we having to deal with on a regular basis. If you notice, almost every day, the president is hosting some type of press conference or making some type of quote major unquote address in the middle of the day,
Mhm.
to take the attention away from the declining stock market, the fact that food prices are still high, fuel prices are still high, and millions of people are being threatened with losing their jobs. So to take people's
Yeah.
attention away from that, you come up with other things. Yesterday, they talked about $100 billion is going to be invested for the development of microchips in Arizona. Yet at the same time, you got thousands upon thousands of people that are being fired from their jobs every day. So these are the type of games that are being played with the minds of the people, but it's not going to benefit the people at all. These tariffs are not going to benefit the people in the United States or around the world. So this is what we have to deal with. And the question of how do we fight back? Well, that's why we need to be having these discussions to figure out. We can have a multiplicity of tactics. Some people may want to call for a general strike. Other people may want to call for mass demonstrations, sit-ins, boycotts, like on February 28th, the blackout movement that took place.
Mhm.
Uh, we could have a multiplicity of tactics, but the important thing is to resist the imposition of what is going to become an authoritarian and maybe even fascist state here in the U.S. So, we have to figure out, you know, who the enemy is, what the enemy is, and also we have to figure out what tactics we're going to use. As I said, I believe in a multiplicity of tactics. We all don't have to be doing the
Yeah.
same thing at the same time. We could be doing different things at different times, but it has the same objective, and that's what's important.
That's good.
So
That's good. Yeah,
how do you
because
see?
I think so. I think a concentrated effort, we definitely need that.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
because there are going to be long-term effects.
Yes.
When you talk about in our communities right now,
Hmm.
what kind of long-term effects? I had the pleasure of talking with Bishop Bernadette Jefferson out of Flint,
Hmm.
and they of course had the water crises there, and she's already preparing the community, telling them to keep cash on hand and stop spending, stop doing unnecessary spending. She said things are happening so fast you don't even have, if you didn't start a garden, if your stuff is not starting, you don't even have time to start, but get connected to some of the farms. There's a lot of things that we can do. So what are some of the long-term effects that we're looking at because of his choices?
Yes, I think the question about what you just mentioned in regard to consumer spending, this is very important because, yeah, people should save money. But if you think about it, the fact that people don't feel comfortable or optimistic about perhaps buying a home or a new car or some other consumer good or taking a vacation someplace, that has a negative impact on the overall economy. So these things that are being created, this whole atmosphere of fear and uncertainty, is actually bad for the economy. So yes, and we know in terms of what happened in Flint 10 years ago, how the administration at that time covered up what was going on. People like Bishop Jefferson and others in Flint had gone public
Mhm.
about the problems with the water system there, and the governor at the time denied it, and others denied it. And then they denied it to the
Yeah,
point where they could not deny it anymore, and people were losing their lives and becoming sickened, and they had to say something, but they were never held accountable for the crimes that they committed. And that seems to be a pattern, whether it's on a state level or a federal level. People can be uh, involved in doing irreparable harm to millions upon millions of people, yet there's no accountability. So that's another avenue that we have to work on as social justice activists. How do you hold people accountable when they commit crimes against the people? These are very
exactly.
important questions during this
That
period.
has been running through everything. Yeah. And this administration is the worst I've seen. Um, so I put on here the judicial appointments influenced a lot of civil rights and racial equality in the United States. Can you talk about his decisions and how that's going to affect judicially?
Yeah, well, this has been going on for decades in regard to appointing conservative judges to the federal courts and also to the Supreme Courts. During his tenure,
Mm.
it worsened. And now you have a 6-3 conservative right wing majority on the U.S. Supreme Court. So they even ruled last year that Donald Trump could not be held accountable for anything that he did in, quote, an official, unquote, capacity. And what does that mean? Uh, they never really clarified that. And then the fact that he was allowed to take power again in January means that justice will not be served, at least if he holds out for 4 years. It'll be another 4 years before he can even be sentenced for the crimes that he was convicted of. So this is the ultimate mockery of justice, of the criminal justice system here in the United States. And you have people in prisons in this country, way over 2 million people in prisons, many of whom have very limited legal assistance, very slim chances of getting out soon. Yet you have other people who can commit crimes and go unpunished. So it just shows the difference in the level of how justice is applied inside the United States.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I think that what people a lot of times people just don't understand, and I'll sometimes run across people on social media who just have no clue, who are still, African Americans who still continue to support his actions. And some people are, I believe a lot of people are kind of hiding away now that were behind him 100%. But when you think about the fact that civil rights lawsuits under Attorney General Pam Bondi that Jay put in here for us, thank you, Jay. Um, All of those are terminated now. The Justice Department stopped federal civil rights lawsuits that
Yeah.
accuse police and fire departments of discriminatory hiring and promotion practices. So the protection that we had for civil rights, and I think people need to understand that, is no longer. Just because you were mistreated, it means nothing. Am I right?
Yes, and this is very important now because even in Detroit, between 2003 and 2013, there was a federal consent consent decree that was enforced against the Detroit Police Department for the use of excessive force and also for the deplorable conditions that existed in the lockups in Detroit. And that was lifted under emergency management. But now, all of those consent judgments and consent decrees, as far as I can see, are going to be null and void. So all the investigations that have been going on and the reforms that have been going on involving police brutality and police misconduct and police terrorism against people, there will be no movement in that direction under the Trump administration's Justice Department. So these are some of the other challenges that we're going to be facing. And there was a study that just came out last week indicating that deadly encounters with the police in the United States have increased. They did increase last year in 2024. So all the developments that occurred 5 years ago around the police execution of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, what happened to Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia, the vigilante killing that he was subjected to, all of that, they're trying to sweep it under the rug now. The demonstrations in 2020 were instrumental in driving Trump from office because people recognized that his policies were not effective. So the fact that he's gotten back in, now he wants to retaliate and eliminate any federal investigations or federal imposition of reforms related to police misconduct. And this also goes for other avenues, like environmental protection, for example, is another very important avenue that this administration is in total opposition to. They don't believe either that climate change is a reality. They're climate denialists, and they've withdrawn from the Paris climate agreements. They've withdrawn from the World Health Organization, meaning that they will not cooperate on any global efforts to improve global health around the world.
Right.
So these are the things that we're dealing with, and we'll have to see. And we're already getting indications of it already with measles outbreaks in Texas. There's also been some cases in New York City. Also, you know, it's going to be even worse as the weeks and the months go on in terms of the inability or the lack of commitment to public health by this administration.
And you know, I think too, now when I was younger, people got the measles and the chicken pox and the childhood illnesses. And once you had it, you were done. I mean, it wasn't a big deal. So, and I'm not saying it's not, I'm trying to figure out in some aspects, how come now? You know?
Well, I mean, the whole paranoia that's been generated around vaccines in the United States has been a major factor in all of this. And the fact that people fear vaccines more than they do infectious disease is clearly problematic in the United States right now.
Yes, by itself.
So that has a lot to do with it. The children that have been dying, one of them at least, was unvaccinated in Texas. So we're going to have more and more of these outbreaks because there's no interest, for example, and abiding by normal uh, health protocols. So we'll see how things develop over the next few weeks.
Yeah, it's I think in many ways I've been telling people that, and I know Jay Love, who's also on the board of MCHR, we've talked about the fact that this is a time to for healing. I think we need to stop putting our hurt and pain under a rug and acting like this doesn't matter. I think it matters, but I think we need to figure out what are we going to do in the meantime. What can we do now so that we can stop? I mean, you said it. You said sit-ins. You said um, that we're going to have to really retaliate. And I'm wondering, what on earth? How far does this administration want to go? Because we already have our DEI programs are gone, civil rights gone. A lot of the care. I mean, the veterans. Did you see what he did with the veterans? The insulin that was $8 is what now 80 or almost 100 per month for seniors. Something that they really need. And I think when it comes to accountability and responsibility, I believe, I think the Republicans need to take responsibility for who they put in office.
Yeah, and
And for
they.
me, yeah, go ahead.
I was just wanted to say that the atmosphere politically that exists in the United States right now is not conducive to democratic debate and discussion. That the people who are in the U.S. Congress, whether it's the House of Representatives or the Senate, have to, if they're members of the Republican Party, have to kowtow to the Trump White House. So yes, that is the problem. So there's a lack of democratic debate and discussion, and they think that's a good thing. That you're not supposed to oppose Donald Trump under any circumstances. They claim they have a mandate to dismantle the government, to lay off people, to cut off programs, to halt scientific research, foreign assistance. Yet they got 49% of the popular vote. Kamala Harris got 48% of the popular vote. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so where's the mandate, the wide mandate, with 1.5% of the popular vote, and they won in those critical battleground states, but neither one of them received 50% of the vote. Now, in some countries, they have
Mm-hmm.
systems where if you get less than 50% plus one, that means less than 51% in an election, there has to be a runoff between the two leading candidates. But that doesn't happen
Yeah.
here. So, people can win with 49% of the vote and declare that they have a sweeping mandate to make changes which are detrimental to the people. So it's just a problem, with the type of political system that we have in this country.
Yeah, so I really do believe that the system needs to we need to look at that system. I mean, we've
Yeah,
got lobbyists that are, on behalf of corporations, they lobby for corporations. The people's voice is not heard. We have not, we are not seeing politicians, a lot of them that are speaking on behalf of the people, of the majority of the people. So what what I need us to understand is that the majority is not heard. We're not involved. The conversations they have at that administrative level, that's their stuff, but yet it affects us. You see what I'm saying? It's their
yeah,
battle, they're battling, but the impact is going to be on us. And
Yes.
so, yeah, it's something because it's like, how, where are we going to go from here? And can you talk a little bit about the rhetoric and the actions, um, and how that perception affects race relations? And
Yeah.
and even when it comes to media, what the devices that they're using right now, you always got to know what the enemy is doing, right? They say keep your enemy tighter so you can see what he's doing. so we got to know, the tactics of this person and this other person who wasn't even voted in. And for me, I just got to get this out. For me, it's like a child, you know, who has a tantrum, who didn't get his way before, now wants to get everybody back. Maybe a 3 or 4 year old, not even 5 year old. And I'm thinking at any moment, somebody can just get up and pick this child up and put him in timeout and get him. He needs a long timeout along with his constituents. Okay. All right. I digress. Okay. But
Well,
tell us
what's
about how the
astonishing
rhetoric and the actions affect us. What's
what's
that?
astonishing is that they're being allowed to do this by the U.S. Congress and by other purported guardians of the state. It's outrageous that they're being allowed to have access to federal departments, even, I understand, Social Security, trust fund. This is dangerous. These are monies that the masses of people, working people in this country, have paid into for decades and decades, and it belongs to them. It does not belong to Donald Trump or Elon Musk or anybody else, and they should not be
Yes.
allowed to have access to any of those revenues. But what we have is a corporate media. It's dominated by corporate interests in this country. So that, of course, inherently places limitations on freedom of speech and also investigative journalism. It's very limited, the amount of investigative journalism that's taking place in this country. The media should be ripping up all of these policies that are being implemented right now because they're illegal and because they're detrimental to hundreds of millions of people in this country and around the world. So that is what needs to be done. It is impacting freedom of speech. And the language that's being used, of course, is fueling racial animosity and oppression. They've made it comfortable. People can feel comfortable for using racial slurs and denigrating people of certain races and nationalities. We saw the rally that was held at Madison Square Garden just prior to the national elections last year, where African Americans, Puerto Ricans, Muslims were spoken of in such derogatory and demeaning terms. And these are the people that took over the White House just less than 2 months ago. So, of course, yes, racism is going to accelerate. Racial incidents are going to accelerate. There'll be less respect for African Americans and other people of color just because they are who they are. And to say that if you have a position in the federal government, whether it's in the Federal Aviation Administration or the Department of Education, the Social Security Administration, or wherever, to say that the reason you have that position is because you're Black or because you're a woman. It fuels racism and it fuels animosity and dissidence. So, yeah, the language is very, very important in analyzing what is going on right now. And also the fact that we have a corporate media in this country that will not break down to the people what is actually going on based upon its own history and legal system. And it's also astonishing and shocking that the law enforcement entities, the courts, have not put a full halt to what is going on right now over the last month and a half in this country. So it's up to the masses of people, in my opinion, to get out into the streets. And there's been a lot of demonstrations that have been taking place every day around the country. There'll be more. And I believe that is the only way we're going to resolve this crisis right now, is the people themselves have to take the situation into their own hands.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. And I know that we really need to think about community. And at the community level, what do we do at the community level? So at the community level, we need to be having conversations, making sure that the police at the community level are for the community. Making sure that our relationship with the police department and those who serve as in law enforcement and in first responders, where the people, the general population accesses these services. So first responders, they need to we need to make sure that they're a part of the community, that they have the community and in their heart, that they're not walking around here with these biases that are unchecked, right? And at some point have the conversation so that we build community within our communities, and where we can garrison our own community with a different. It doesn't, I mean, just because they say no DEI doesn't mean that they need to operate like that. The question is, those who are in leadership, will those people have emotional intelligence, or will they have be emotionally ignorant like people who lead our country right now?
Yeah, well,
And so, you know,
if they believe what Trump believes, then of course they will be gleeful that these attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion are taking place at the highest level. And you had corporations like Target and others, and we've seen the moves that have been made, even by Google, in terms of not acknowledging African American History Month, not acknowledging Women's History Month, which is March. All of these things shows that they're kowtowing to this racist atmosphere that exists. The Washington Post, all the problems they're having there because it's owned by Jeff Bezos, who also owns Amazon. But these people are vulnerable because the consumers, if they don't have consumer confidence and support, they're going to be in big trouble. And that's what's happening right now with the stock market declining. And it's really going to get rough. Even if Trump decides to reverse course on some of this, and there are rumors that he is, perhaps at his speech before the joint sessions of Congress tonight. But at the same time, on and off is no good either. That can cause uncertainty and lack of confidence in the economy and in the workforce and the labor market. So on the one hand, you're making all these proclamations, then they're hinting that, well, it may not be permanent. We may scale them back 50% or 20% or whatever, but it's still causing confusion, and and the whole system is just becoming discombobulated, and people are being brought about in a very discontented situation in the United States. So yeah, going back and forth could also be problematic in regard to policy and also stability, social stability and economic stability.
yeah. And so tonight, I had no intentions of watching him. I have somebody else that's going to be on during that time just to prove that I'm not going to watch him.
Well,
And
now
because
so much to
we
watch
are
now.
here,
So much to watch now. I mean, hey, you can watch whatever you
yeah, I
want.
can catch up later.
Yeah,
Right.
you can read about it if you decide to read about it in the papers tomorrow or whatever.
Right, right. What I know is that whatever he says,
Yes.
I'm not sure how bright it will be, and or true.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm good on that. I'll just hold off and wait
Mm-hmm.
until later because I can catch up on that. I'm sure somebody will report it out and
Mm-hmm.
give me like a summary or something because
Yes.
no way did I want to at all give him the honor of having my eyes on him for not even a moment.
Yes.
And I think giving him a very low
Mm-hmm.
rating tonight would be great. Um,
Yes.
they were talking about the boycotts, and of course I did participate, but I've been boycotting for a while now. A lot of things,
Yeah, we should.
like everything. Yeah, yeah. We put I'm putting a lot of things on halt
Mm-hmm.
um, because I want to be very conscious about how I spend my money, how I spend my time, and how I spend my energy.
Yes.
And it's very important, to look at that. And I'm not going to spend it on garbage. I'm not going to waste time like that and can't get those minutes back, So so we can
No,
we
no,
can
you
make
cannot.
we can make a change. We can make that difference. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
the economic changes that are affecting us, you had talked about the food during this
Yeah.
era. Um,
And what's interesting is that has not been one executive order to lower grocery prices or rent prices or the price of
yeah.
mortgages or gasoline. So, all the executive orders are against the people. They're designed to harm the people. So,
Yeah.
I'm not impressed at all with those who feel that this is somehow, in the long run, going to benefit working people in this country. I do not believe that. And by causing animosity between the U.S. and Canada, its largest trading partner, nothing good is going to come out of that in terms of the economic and social conditions here in the United States.
Yeah, they did you see just while he was talking, like you said, um, he uh he definitely showed, well, they showed how the market plummeted while he was speaking.
Exactly. And these are the
I mean, it
capitalists.
plummeted.
These are the people who he's supposed to represent. He claims he's a billionaire. Elon Musk says he's the richest person in the world. Whether that's true or not, but they're harming other people in their own class. This is what people need to realize is that what they're doing is not helping the overall economy. And if people stop purchasing, if they start selling off stocks, and they stop planning expenditures, it's going to be bad for the capitalists as well as for the working people.
Yeah, yeah. And I think what's really important to know too is that we got to realize that the American dollar came into being because of other people believing in the American dollar.
Yeah.
It was all about belief. It's about what they believe to be true. So
What
as
happens if they
long
don't believe? They
as
stop believing. What
what's
happens if they
that?
stop believing? What happens if they stop believing in the
Exactly,
dollar, the strength of the dollar?
exactly, exactly, exactly. You know what I'm saying? And what happens when all of the people around us, all of our allies stop believing in the dollar? What
Well,
happens?
yes.
What happens when that happens? And we already know those who are not just concentrating on the United States and do look around to see what's going on in other countries, what other countries are doing. And we haven't even mentioned BRICS. We'll probably have to bring that up and have you back on, Abayomi, for to have that discussion. But you have where other countries, it's all in belief. So what happens if the American dollar is no longer of value? then
That's being
whoever
talked
is
about.
of billionaire status, he's almost going to shoot himself.
They're very nervous.
Because
All of
what
this
happened,
is to cover up
he'll plummet.
their fear. You know, the U.S. is slipping internationally, and even historically, the Western European countries were not the dominant within the world economy, the world system, up until the end of the 15th, early 16th centuries. And just because they're on top now doesn't mean that that's going to continue. And the BRICS, you mentioned Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa Plus Summit. One of their main objectives is de-dollarization. They want to enhance trade in other currencies, to weaken the hegemony of the US dollar, meaning weaken the economic hegemony of international finance capital that's based here in the United States. So this is a threat. And a lot of these tariffs are centered around addressing those threats. But I don't think they're going about it in the right way. Even ending the Ukraine war, I think the war should end. But at the same time, they're trying to end it for the wrong reasons. And that is to focus more attention on fighting China. The Trump wing of the ruling class views China as a greater threat than Russia. Or they want to break Russia away from its alliance with China, which is not, in my opinion, going to happen at this stage in history. And the fact that he wants Volodymyr Zelensky to sign away all the strategic rare minerals in Ukraine to the United States, I don't think the Russians will accept that either. And whether that's going to work remains to be seen. So if you're splitting off from Canada, you're splitting off from the European Union. So how is that going to benefit people in the United States, whether they're workers or whether they're capitalists? That's the major question that we're going to see answers to in the next few weeks.
Yeah. And I think that is major, because you figure you have all of these actions that have happened, and we're not talking peace at all.
No, you haven't heard
We're
anything
not
about
talking peace. We're not, BRICS originally, it's not like they didn't invite us to the conversation.
Yeah.
It is, it's a time where I'll never forget her name. I call her Dr. Amada, but she was a nun. She was over at Mary Grove College, and she was an economist, okay? And she taught the master level. And this woman was brilliant, and she could rattle off numbers and everything. And I'll never forget her looking at our class, and she said, listen, right now you thrive on the backs of others because of marginalization. And she talked about slavery and the reason why it helped to make America what it was economically. And then she said, but there will come a time, and it won't be far away. Now, this was back in 2006, 2005, 2006. And she said, and the marginalization, the marginalized, that gap won't be like it is now. She said, because steady, every year that gap is going like this. And at one time, she said, you're going to look up and you won't, all those countries that you say are third world, you won't be able to tell the difference between that and the United States. And she said, because of greed. That's what she said. Yeah. And I looked, I said, here we are today. She was so on point, and it's because of greed.
Yes. And look at China, for example, right on the heels of the United States. And they have been in existence, the People's Republic of China, for 75 years. It'll be 76 years in October. And they are able to in certain areas outproduce the United States, outtrade the United States. Look, for example, at the whole situation involving artificial intelligence. Now, the U.S. has been trying to dominate the field, and they're making a lot of money. They've been selling a lot of high-priced stocks. And then some people in China come out with DeepSeek, which is a AI software that's open source and free. This undermines the whole profit making system here in the United States. And so the stocks have been falling for NVIDIA and some of these other AI corporations that were making so much money just a few months ago. So these are some of the contradictions they're facing, that the tariffs are designed to try to block, all these new advances in science that are being put out by China and other countries. But I do not believe it will be effective because the world today is becoming smaller and smaller, and we have access to DeepSeek and other platforms that you can have access to for free, and this undermines what the U.S. capitalists are trying to do, not only worldwide but also to the people here inside the United States as well.
That's right. Well, Abayomi, thank you so much. If we had three things that you could, just three simple things that we can do, because from some aspect, when we look at the decisions that are being made, the documents that are being signed, how much power do we have? So I'm saying the serenity prayer every day. God grant me the serenity, right? To accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So in my wisdom, I'm knowing today that some of those things that are going on that I have no control over, I let that go, right? I can't change that. Now it's time for what can we do? Can you give our listeners three things that we can do today to help us move forward?
Well, first of all, we should not limit our ability and our capacity to make change. And I mean monumental change, because we've seen it, in our lifetimes. So first of all, we have to be realistic, of course, but don't underestimate your capacity to change developments in this country and around the world. The second thing is to stay informed, to look for alternative sources of information that are valid. This is very, very important because the media right now is being pressured to go along with the existing program of the administration here in the United States. Even though, the economy is doing very bad, and that was one of the main issues that the current administration ran on, and that was going to automatically overnight lower food prices. Everything was going to improve overnight, and we've seen just the opposite. And the third thing I would say was to remain steadfast and optimistic about the future. As bad as the situation is right now, the people who are in power right now don't have all of the options secured. And that's why they're nervous. This is why they're trying to come up with something every single day to deflect people's attention away from the deteriorating situation inside the country. So we have to, of course, don't underestimate our capacity to make change, to stay informed, and also at the same time to bring about a situation in which we ourselves can be activated and to move the struggle forward. And I believe we can do it if we're optimistic and if we're focused. All of these things can come to pass.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Abayomi. I
Thank you for the
appreciate the work
invitation.
that you do. Yes, and I will continue to support you. You keep us abreast of everything you're doing so we can get it out there and see how we can support you.
Most
Can you
definitely.
tell them maybe the website that we need to tap into so we can keep up with you?
Well, I'm on social media, Facebook, X, which was formerly Twitter and Instagram. And I have a blog, the Pan African Newswire, and you can reach that at panafricannews.blogspot.com. That's panafricannews.blogspot.com. And I also write for several publications, fighting-words.net, fighting-words.net, newsghana.com. So also a contributor to that publication, among others. So yeah, if you Google me, you can find a lot of the writings and activities that I'm involved in.
Thank you so much. Like I said,
Thank
oh
you.
my goodness, you are such a treasure. And I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening at MCHR. You can donate to MCHR anytime. You can become a member at mchr.org. And listen, you are powerful. When things get rough on the outside, always go within. And remember, Michigan Coalition for Human Rights promotes awareness of, commitment to, and advocacy for human rights and the environmental rights of planet Earth through education, community organization, and action. MCHR opposes forces that suppress human dignity, freedom, and justice locally and around the world. We'll see you on March 27th, and we got some goodies coming up. I hope you have a wonderful week. God bless you.